Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here. Welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Today I have a special guest. Her name is Jenni Prokopy. She's the founder, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, editrix
No,
of
that's great.
chronicbabe.com, where she draws on her experience with fibromyalgia and other conditions to teach women to live incredibly in spite of illness. She tweets at Chronic Babe, speaks on stage across the country, consults with amazing clients, and wants you to have fun even if you're sick. For 22 years, the past 10 as an entrepreneur, Jenni has enjoyed success as a writer, editor, and consultant to hundreds of organizations worldwide, helping them craft and share their messages. She focuses on working with healthcare organizations, sharing stories of strength, wellness, and inspiration in the face of adversity. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jenni. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I feel pretty good today.
Good. That's very good to hear. So most of the people watching this are used to me interviewing people with diabetes, but today I wanted to step just a little bit outside of the norm because I think that diabetes is a very well-known chronic disease, but there are also tons and tons of other ones out there. And the thing about it is we all share this kind of bond where we have this invisible disease where, people can't tell by looking at us that we're sick, quote unquote. And they think that they don't realize all this stuff going on behind the scenes or in our brains all the time. So I wanted to kind of highlight another person that's kind of going through the same struggles. So why don't you give us a little bit of insight into kind of your diagnosis with fibromyalgia and the road you traveled to get to where you are now as the chronic babe?
Cool, thanks. Well, I'm happy to tell you some of my story. I am really honored to be part of this project. I have been called by a bunch of my diabetes friends an honorary member of the diabetes online community, which is fantastic. So I get to hang with them at conferences and stuff. They let me ride along, which is great.
We're so exclusive. We're so exclusive.
I know. So I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia when I was 25, and that was quite a number of years ago. We're getting close to it being a 20-year time frame with fibromyalgia. When I got diagnosed, I was the only person I knew that had chronic illness. I didn't know anybody else who was living with chronic illness. It was not something that we talked about in my peer group. And I had been an extremely active, like a competitive swimmer and sailor, and somebody who would go work out every day, somebody who would walk miles a day. I live in Chicago, and I would walk home from work. I'd walk like a 3-mile walk home from work on a regular basis. Nice. I went from that to being like not able to walk more than a couple blocks.
Right.
And being in pain and having all these other weird symptoms like gastrointestinal symptoms and migraines and depression and all kinds of stuff. And it was so terrifying because I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. I didn't know anybody else who was going through it. So it took me quite a few years to kind of get a handle on how I was going to reclaim my life, right? Because it happened when I was 25. That's when a lot of us are really starting to build our lives, build our careers, maybe build long-term relationships. Some of us are starting families then. We're making these big decisions. And meanwhile, I had this illness that was like crunching me down and cramping my style in such a huge way. So after a few years, I kind of started to figure out how to have some workarounds and how to cope and how to accept what was going on instead of living in this like negative space all the time. And so I started Chronic Babe, and that was the project I started blogging 10 years ago. And it was just going to be a little blog about how I try to kick ass in spite of illness and hopefully inspire some other people and meet some other people in the process. And it has evolved in this huge way into this much more enormous project with the website, a weekly YouTube series, and a newsletter that 4,000 people read, and a book that I have coming out this summer. So, it has grown into this huge thing, and it's turned into my passion to help other people, because it's really my experience that no matter what chronic illness you have, some of us share a lot of these common experiences, and we can help each other. Like, it's not so much important what meds each of us are taking or what treatments we're taking. It's much more about our connection as human beings and this connected, shared experience of living with illness, and how can we help each other get through that and really like live an exceptional life in spite of it. So even though I'm sick all the time, I have fibromyalgia and a bunch of other things like asthma and Raynaud's phenomenon and anxiety and depression and GERD and rosacea, hypothyroid and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
I still make a huge effort to lead a really exceptional life as much as I can in spite of it. And I truly believe that all of us can do that, that we can move beyond the limitations of our illness. So that's kind of what keeps me going. Like today's actually a pretty big pain day for me, but I'm still doing okay. You know?
You're talking to me, and I was to say that's super inspirational. I'm so glad that I even got in contact with you because we met actually through Kickstarter, which is you have a book coming out, and I have a book coming out, and I actually modeled Jenni's campaign because she's so awesome, and I found so many commonalities between what she was offering to her chronic disease community and diabetes, and kind of a lot of things that you said, you know, I want to touch on is that, like, for me too, is like when I got diagnosed, I was 9 with diabetes, but I didn't know anybody. It wasn't like you said, I didn't talk about it with my peer group. I didn't know anybody with diabetes until I was like in my 20s. So that thing that's struggling with feeling alone, I think that's kind of universal in the chronic disease community, that when you first get your diagnosis, because that's something that's foreign to you, you don't know anybody else, or maybe if you're lucky, or I don't say they're lucky, but or you do know somebody else that has this disease or has a connection to somebody who does, but most of us don't have that. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I am doing what I'm doing today, because one time I realized that I was able to help somebody else through my story of struggle, and I just became addicted to that, to helping people, because I said, you know what, diabetes didn't happen to me. Diabetes happened for me so that I could help other people. And that's kind of what drives me. And I think that the Diabetes Online community, which you are a member of, whether you're not even just honorary, you're one of us, because like I was saying earlier, it's like you don't have to have diabetes to be a member of the Diabetes Online community. You can love someone with diabetes, or you can just understand and support us. So it's like that the Diabetes Online community kind of bolstered my voice. Like I already had a voice, but then when I saw all these other amazing people out there, you know, we were talking about Carrie Sparling, who she's out there blogging and inspiring, and Ginger Vieira, who I've interviewed, who's awesome. She also has diabetes and fibromyalgia and celiac disease, because I think that a lot of us that have these autoimmune / chronic diseases, we have more than one, a lot of us.
That's so true.
So I just think that's awesome, and I'm in awe of what you do, and you know,
thank you.
Glad to be in such great company. So I was going to say, why don't you tell us a little bit more? I was going to say, you gave us a little, you know, kind of like this short story, but a lot of us struggle. And in a lot of these other episodes, I talk a lot about the struggles that I've gone through and whoever I'm talking with. So what would you kind of perceive to be your biggest struggle? I know you say you have a lot of pain, and I know that's what's involved with fibromyalgia. Would you say that's your biggest struggle that you deal with day to day? Or is it more, like you said, a cerebral thing, a mental thing of just getting in that mindset of positivity, even though you're in that pain?
I would say it's a good mixture of both, because the practicalities of living with chronic pain there's a lot that happens. So I'll give you a picture of my day. I wake up in the morning and I'm already in pain. That's like my first sensation. Like maybe I roll over and my boyfriend's there, and that's nice. But usually he's awake before me because I have a hard time getting out of bed because I'm hurting and I feel tired and I don't feel rested, and that can be challenging. But I get out of bed, I move around a lot, everything kind of crackles and crunches, and I can kind of gauge what's going on with my body. So I do kind of like a little scan, what's hurting, what do I need to pay attention to this morning? The first thing I do is drink a big glass of water, because we all get dehydrated while we're sleeping, right? And then I use a heating pad. I lay down on the floor. I heat my back up for 20 minutes. I take round 1 of my meds. After 20 minutes, I take the heating pad off. I take round 2 of my morning meds, and I do like a 20-minute yoga and stretch routine. And it encompasses all areas of my body, but I might focus on particular areas that are really in need. Like today, my lower back is just killing me. I have no idea why. So did a bunch of extra stuff. And then the pain will dictate like the clothes that I wear, because sometimes I have so much pain. Like I I have sensitivity in my skin. It's called allodynia, where like any sensation feels really painful. So sometimes it's too painful to wear jeans because the seams along my legs hurt, which is.
I was gonna say I hate jeans in general. Like, I don't even have that, and I think I might own one pair of jeans that I might have worn like 20 years ago because
I have two.
Constricted. Like I feel like it is constricting me. So yeah.
Yeah. So that's a challenge, and then like you get moving and you do your day. So like this morning I had a tea date with someone, but I could feel that I was getting cramped up and in pain. So like twice during our tea date, I get up and stand and like stretch and move around in the cafe, and it's like. I go to the cafe where everybody knows me, so I don't get tons of weird looks. But here I am doing like back bends and all kinds of stuff in the cafe to take care of myself because I kind of, I kind of don't give enough what people think. So I'm going to do airport lounge yoga. I'm going to stretch at the train station if I need to. I'm going to do what I need to do to take care of myself. But like, that's kind of how my day starts, with an hour of intense self-care before I've even had any breakfast or anything.
Yeah, I want to just jump in and say two things. The fact that you say I think that's a huge thing that people need to embrace, is that I don't give an F what people think. Yeah. You need to kind of embody that, not in a way that, is like, screw everybody. But
right. You don't want to be
right. You don't want to be mean. But the thing is that you need to do what you need to do to take care of your health, and to allow what somebody else might think about you moving around in a weird way in public to dictate you doing what you need to do. That's
no.
To eradicate that. Like if that's something that, you got to get rid of that. And the second thing is, and this is huge for me too, and I think this is huge for anybody, is having a set routine. You have a self-care routine in the morning. I am obsessed, and people know me, the people that know me, that this sits by my bed. The first thing I do when I wake up, I don't even like do anything. I mean, I'll check my blood sugar first, like on my CGM. But other than that, like I'm guzzling at least 12 ounces of water, maybe 16.
That's right.
The first step, I think, especially if we're living with chronic disease, anything that's going to aggravate our systems more is going to be harder to deal with than anybody who doesn't. So if we're dehydrated, then anything that we're dealing with, whether it's pain or high or low blood sugar, it's going to be even more difficult to deal with if we're not properly hydrated. So that's huge. And then you have that self-care routine where you're actually doing that yoga and that heating up and that stretching. It's really, I think for me, what you're saying is that you're committing to your wellness. Oh,
absolutely. It is, one of the things that I have learned over the years, I have a really exceptional coach. I have an executive coach who's helped me with my business, but she's also a very spiritual person, and she's very focused on excelling in your business while taking excellent care of yourself. Like it always comes back to first self-care, because you can't help other people if you're not taking care of yourself. So she taught me this thing called sacred practices, and I've done a couple of videos about this on my YouTube channel. In short, it is basically you take some time and you write down what do you need to do to have the best day you can do. Does that include lots of water? Does that include meditation or prayer? Does that include a green smoothie? Does that include a nap? Like whatever it is, you go through your day, you run the list, and then I printed mine out really pretty and cute, and I framed it, and I have it here. It's right here on my office desk.
Nice.
In my bathroom, so I can't miss it because I'm in the bathroom a bunch of times a day, and it's on my nightstand, so I can't miss this document. I see it every day, and it keeps me accountable because they're sacred practices. They must be followed for me to have the best day I can, and so I never miss them, like ever. I'm really devoted to them, because the days that I skip a couple are days that I feel like crap, and I can't be as productive, and I can't help as many people, and I run the risk of hurting my business, and it's not good for my personal relationships. So yeah, I'm with you. I am devoted to those sacred practices, and that's, for me, it includes all those things I listed and a handful more. Yeah. And I don't compromise on them. And people who travel with me will know that, like, if it means I'm getting up at 4 a.m. because I want to have that hour before we then get ready to go and take a plane, I mean, that's the deal,
Absolutely.
I travel with a yoga mat. I travel with a heating pad. I bring all that stuff with me. And it means that I usually have an extra suitcase.
Hey, man.
you know, people
That's
can feel.
exactly. And I think that it all boils down to this one kind of commonality that we all need to embrace, and that's loving ourselves enough to commit to a thing like that, because that's what it was for me. Because like my story was that being coming from obese to athlete, from a binge eating addiction to having a bachelor's degree of nutrition science and teaching other people how to eat healthy, where when my relationship to food used to be horrifying, is that you have to love yourself. You have to believe with every fiber of your being that you deserve that time, that you deserve that sacred practice, that you deserve that love that you're giving to yourself. Because if we don't believe that, if you don't feel like you're worth it, or you have the, you know, that you're worthy, if you don't feel you're worthy, then you're never going to stick with it. You're never going to even, you may never even start. So, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, were you ever at a point in your life? I mean, how long have you been practicing this sacred practice? And was there a point where you weren't doing that?
Oh, was there ever? I mean, I come from a complicated background, as so many of us do. And self-care was not emphasized. The emphasis that I was brought up with was to take care of other people first. And that unfortunately shaped me to be in a position to not really know how to take the best care of myself. And I compromised a lot for many, many years. I felt ashamed, and I felt embarrassed, and I felt frustrated, and I felt like I didn't want to be a burden. And people would think that I was weird, or like I remember going to a barbecue once, and for me, it was a big day because I didn't feel like I could even get out of the house, but I did. But I wore sweatpants and a long sleeve t-shirt, and I have Raynaud's, so I have circulatory stuff. And so it was a little chilly outside. So I had wool socks on, and we're at this barbecue, and everybody else is in shorts and t-shirts and just like dealing with the chilly weather. And people were making comments to me like, gosh, why are you wearing like black sweatpants? It's so dark and gloomy. And what's with the socks? And really being super negative. And to me, I was like, I'm a champion. I made it out of the house. This is a really big deal for me. And they were kind of cutting me down. And I learned a very challenging lesson about cutting out the people in your life who don't support you making healthy decisions. And that sucked to lose friends. But I mean, once I hit this point, it was like something shifted in my mind a few years ago. I'd say like 7, 8 years ago, where I started to realize that I was not honoring myself all the time, that I was not always practicing what I preached. You know, I would tell other chronic babes, like, here's some things you should do. And then I would go and do the opposite. It's kind of hard to admit that, but that's what was happening. And I hit a point where I was like, I can't do that anymore. That's BS. I can't do that. That's not cool. That's not loving to myself. And so I had to make a very concerted effort to make some difficult decisions, huge life-changing decisions. You know, cutting people out of my life, changing relationships, changing the way that I work. I mean, just really doing. But what I've found is that the more I honor that, the more people respect that I honor that, and the more people I attract into my life who respect it. And so now I feel like I'm in this really lovely, supportive community. I can show up at a friend's house, and if I feel like crap, they don't care what I look like. They don't care if I show up in pajamas. They really don't. They're just happy for me to be there, and they get it, you know? So it's like I've spent, you know, a few years now really cultivating a lifestyle that supports me doing the best thing I can for my health, and excising all of the people and other influences that don't support that. And it's challenging, and it is hard to lose relationships, but I'd rather make that sacrifice and then build a community of support that rallies around me and that does not give a crap if I show up with no makeup and my pajamas with like 3-day unwashed hair. They do not give a crap. You know, they'd rather have me there, and I'd rather be there because that's healthier for me too, to be around people. And so that's made a really big difference. And the sacred practices, like the actual, like the framing of the sacred practices and everything, that's been about 2 years. And that has been a major, that like stepped up my game in a really big way, you know?
Yeah, you said so many things that I really just like resonates with me hugely, because I'm a big believer of, like, I'm a coach. I coach people on health and wellness, but also I think before health and wellness, because it goes back, it comes to your mindset. That's the whole thing about loving yourself. So I think, that what you said about, it's kind of like that whole, the 5 people you spend the most time with are kind of, that's your level that you're playing at. So if you're spending a lot of time with people that are negative, that aren't supportive, that aren't willing to kind of at least somewhat try to understand what you're going through, whether it is with diabetes or fibromyalgia or whatever it is, because we all have a lot of background things going on all the time. You have to kind of cut some of those ties. And I've had a very difficult time with that as well. And it's not easy to get rid of certain relationships, but you have to, that comes right back down to loving yourself enough to saying, look, I like this person. I think they might be a good person, but they're not the type of person that's going to be able to allow me to grow and, contribute to the world in the way that I need to. And then kind of just slowly pull yourself away from that person. And yes, it's painful, but that's part of the process of loving yourself, or learning to love yourself, is by giving yourself that respect of being around that type of people. And exactly what you said is that it's kind of like attract like. So when you start being more positive and taking better care of yourself, you will just meet more people who do that, because you're going to be taking different actions. And when you take different actions, you'll be in different situations. And when you're in different situations, you meet different people. It's just this kind of snowball effect of goodness versus just kind of staying stagnant and, kind of like being in a place where people are like, well, what's that? I have a client who I love, and she's actually a good friend of mine, and she's like ashamed of her insulin pump, because she's like, and she's just about to turn 21. So she's very young. And, but she's like, well, I don't want to wear any, and she has her CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor, but she doesn't want to wear it because she's like, I can't hide it. I can't hide it. I'm like, well, why do you feel like you need to hide it? Because it's not anything to be ashamed of. I said, maybe it's the people that you're hanging out with that if they're making you feel bad about it, then maybe you should not necessarily be hanging around them all the time. But yeah, you touched on a lot of really.
I always think it's cool when I'm hanging with my friends who have them, because they're like a cyborg to me.
Yeah, that's what I'm really
yeah, I'm into sci-fi, so I'm like, wow, you've got like 3 devices hooked up to you, and there's like a wire and a tube. I mean, that's sexy. Like, I think it's funny. Like,
it's funny that you say that. My husband literally does call me a sexy cyborg. Like, he does.
See?
But I have a husband who's into like sci-fi, and like he's a nerd, like a computer nerd. He's like, oh, it's so cool, my wife's a robot. Like,
that's fantastic.
The type of people you need to be around. And that's the thing. My husband, I've been married for almost 8 years. I didn't have a CGM or a pump until 2 years ago. So I was on injections, and I had nothing attached to my body for the first 6 years that we were married. So it's not like he fell in love with me that way. Like, he was fine with it as I integrated it later, and he wouldn't. But I think that if I would have had it back then, he probably would have fell in love with me quicker, to be honest. And that's how you know that that's a person that you're meant to be around, because they think that's cool, or they think that's like, interesting, and they want to know more about it. Not like the people at the barbecue that are like, why are you wearing that? Or what is that weird thing hanging off you? Like, that indicates a personality that's not supportive in general. So
I think there's a lot of judgment in those people. And I mean, our society is very focused on judgment. We look at people's surface and we make decisions based on that. And to some degree, we can't help it. That's how our brains are wired. But we can learn to like mentally acknowledge, like, oh, I saw that person, I made a judgment about them. Good, done. Let's move on. Because you could do that. You could walk down the street and judge every person you see and make decisions about them, and you have no idea what's going on for them or what coolness they potentially can offer you. So it's like, I try really hard. I'm certainly not perfect, but I try really hard not to judge people based on their appearance, based on their decisions. I mean, everybody's got everybody has the right to make different decisions about how they treat themselves and take care of themselves. I may feel compassion towards somebody who doesn't choose to take the best care of themselves, but I try not to judge them. And that's tricky because I have judgy pants that I put on a lot, and I have to take off the judgy pants. And, that's a tricky thing. And we all judge each other. And think that the more I surround myself with people who don't judge and people who are, I also, I'm a very creative person. I'm a lifelong writer and I make a lot of crafts and I make art, and this is just how I am. So also surrounding myself with people who are into that is a wonderful thing, because they understand that I can express myself creatively, that craft is part of my self-care, and they support that and they get excited about it, and I like sharing it with them. So it's like when you find people with all these commonalities, not even in the chronic illness stuff, but with other things that you love to do, then you're like, then you have an opportunity to kind of be an advocate and a teacher to those people. So like, for example, I've taken up quilting. I started about a year ago. A friend of mine taught me and my best friend, and I've been doing more and more and more. And as I get into this community, the community is filled with young women, and a lot of them have chronic illness that they aren't necessarily talking about. So I'm on Instagram and showing pictures of my quilts in action and doing all these swaps and, watching videos. And all these people in the background are messaging me going like, I just read your profile and I have lupus. Oh my God, I can't believe, and it's like, I didn't seek out, other people who were sick. I was seeking out people who shared this passion for something else that I do, but coincidentally, they also have chronic illness. So it's like, to me, it's a gift to be able to help them. And it's also helpful for me to know there are lots of other people out there who are exceptional artists and crafts people who have chronic illness and who cope in spite of it. So it's like we're helping each other, and it's the illness isn't the focus. It's just like, oh, by the way, I also have this thing and I take care of it and here's what I do. And anyway, how are you going to sew that thing? So it's nice to have this community that's like not focused on that, but we're still addressing it and taking good care of ourselves, Yeah,
and I think for people watching, what that basically means is follow your passion, whatever your passion is. Like, obviously you're very passionate about crafts, and I'm very passionate about exercise. Like, I wasn't always, but I've become that way. So I have a similar situation. It's like I met somebody at my CrossFit gym. I saw somebody I saw in one of the lockers that there was a pump that somebody just, I'm like, whose pump is that? Whose pump is that? I like started going crazy, and this guy was like, it's mine. I'm like, oh my God. And like, but like, we're there to like work out. Like, and then we just find out that we both have diabetes. And I think the point of that is, follow your passion. If your passion is crafts, if your passion is exercise, if your passion is, teaching dogs to, tap dance, I don't care. Like, whatever your passion is, there are a gigantic group of people in the world that share that passion with you. But until you start getting yourself into that passion and kind of sharing it on things like social media where other people can find you, you're not going to, you won't find that kind of tribe. But everybody follow whatever like you do in your downtime that just, you literally like brings you joy, and you're like, oh, this is like my happy place. And it doesn't matter what it is, or if you think it's weird, or if you think it, it doesn't matter. Just do it, and you'll find the people that are meant to be in your life by doing that. So I think
I agree. I just did a video about this on the YouTube channel I called it Get a Life, Get a Hobby, because so many of the people in my community reach out to me, and it's like their illness has limited them so much that their life just becomes about illness. And that's just boring. I've been there. I've totally been that person. And I was boring to other people. I'm sure I was, I bored myself with how much I was talking about my illness, and it's not that I want people to deny it or hide stuff or not talk about things, but I think that it's so important also to honor what's deep inside of you and what you're passionate about and what you love and what brings you joy. Illness often gets us to a place where we forget about that, and we're focused all the time. Like in DOC, it's like we're focused all the time on our blood sugars and talking about fitness and food and all these other things, and that's fine. But if that's all you're doing, then that's what winds up defining you as a person. And do you really want to be defined by your illness? I think a lot of people do not, but there's this other component we haven't talked about that I think is important to address, which is that a lot of people with illness at least in my community, and this is across like so many disease states, are so unwell that they have to be on disability. And then they lose this part of their identity that was connected to the work that they were doing. They lose that community of people that they've collaborated with in their work. They're home, they're sick, they're isolated, and their life becomes about isolation and illness. And that sucks. And it's my personal mission to like bring people back out of that dark place, because I think that even if you are stuck in bed all day, you can still spend 10 minutes doing something creative.
Yes.
You can still connect with people on Facebook. Even if you're doing voice recognition to your phone to send messages to people on Facebook, even if you can't use your hands. Like, there are people in this world who are so much more limited than so many of us, and they still have active participation in the world. And that active participation in the world, no matter how small it is, gives us so much. It gives us a sense of belonging. It gives us opportunities to support other people, which gives us a sense of personal value. It gives us the chance to do creative things and get in touch with people who share those passions, which helps us feel connected and alive. I mean, there's so much about that. So it's like, a big part of what I try to teach people is like what you're saying, to follow your passion, and really very specifically to find something that you can do. So even if you can't do, like, I can't be a competitive swimmer anymore, but I can still get in the water, you know? I can't spend all day, I can't write for 10 hours straight like I used to do, but I can write for 20 minutes and then take a 10-minute break, you know, and then write for 20 minutes more. I mean, it's like, you've got to figure out how you're going to keep doing those things that feed your passion and keep you excited, even if it's in little tiny chunks.
Yep.
Because otherwise, who are you? You're just like some sick person home alone, and that no one wants to be that person.
And that's exactly what, and for me, it's like the diabetes dominator mentality is. You're literally defining it, and it can be, and you know, my husband even talked about it, it's like not just a diabetes dominator mentality, but it's a disease dominator mentality. And it's exactly what you're saying, is that you don't allow the disease to define what you do every single day. You have this disease, and you also follow your passions. You also chase your dreams. And whether it is figuring out your limitations, and that's your first step. You figure out what your limitations are. Can I do this? How long can I do this for? In what capacity can I participate in this? Boom, you're a disease dominator right there. Like, that's it. Like, that's the mentality. Like, that's it. Like, you don't have to be able to lift 100 pounds over your head to be a diabetes or disease dominator. You just have to be willing to figure out what your limitations are in order to follow those passions, and then put it to practice. That's it. Like, that's all it takes. So,
and baby steps. Baby steps are so key. People think, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, I've been trying to get back into swimming again, and I've had a couple moments of like embarrassment about how it takes me 20 minutes to get my gear ready, and then I drive 15 minutes to the gym, and then I take 10 minutes in the locker room to get dressed. So I've already devoted like half an hour, and then I get in the pool for 8 minutes.
Whatever.
And I'm like, 8 minutes is so sad. I used to swim for an hour a day, but F it. 8 minutes is better than no minutes.
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to get back into it. I mean, I have to have a little chat with myself about it on a regular basis to keep going. But, you know, I use social media for accountability. So if I put it out there that I'm doing this, then people are going to ask me, like, how did it go? And then I don't want to be like, well, I wussed out because I felt embarrassed. Like, I want to be able to say, I did it. I rocked my 8 minutes.
That's right. Awesome. I mean, yeah, so many. I feel like you and I could probably sit here and talk about this for about 10 hours. But yeah, exactly. But here's what I really want to get from you is I want to know what Jenni's top 3 or maybe 4, because I heard that you might have a bonus tip for living well with disease. Just what helps you get through the day? What has helped you get from where you were before to where you are now? Your top 3 or 4 tips that you would give to those watching that may be struggling.
Well, we talked about sacred practices, and I honestly think if you go to my YouTube channel, there's 2 videos about it, or you can find them on my website too. If you just go to chronicbabe.com and search for the word sacred. I'm just going to say, I'm going to link every single one of Jenni's sites underneath this YouTube video. So don't like run and get a pen and leave I'm going to Twitter, Insta, everything, every way that you can get into contact with Jenni is going to be listed directly under the YouTube video. So okay, scroll down. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, check out the Sacred Practices video because I explain it in more detail. But honestly, having that routine and also being socially accountable about it, like announcing it to people, has kept me really accountable. And that having that routine is what keeps me active every day. So even on days like today, when it's a big pain day, I'm still active. I'm still accomplishing stuff. You know, it's not everything on my list, but it's some, which is better than none.
Yep.
So that's the biggie. That's the first one. The second one would be really work on your support team. So we also talked about building relationships with people who honor you, who respect you, who encourage you to do the things you need to do to take care of yourself. I think going out and finding those kinds of people, developing those relationships is important. And I want to stress also that the relationships are a two-way street. So you've got to also be awesome for them. Yeah. So you may not be able to you may not be able to offer huge things like babysitting for half a day or whatever, but you could maybe babysit for an hour. I mean, think about little ways that you can give back to all those people who help you. So building those really strong, mutually supportive relationships are just essential. You need them. And the third is having kind of a spiritual grounding. We didn't really talk about it, but I practice Buddhism. I do meditation every day. And through that practice, I've learned a lot about acceptance, and that has really helped me a great deal. Lots of other people are going to have other religions and faiths, and there are going to be some atheists who are like, what? Spiritual grounding? Maybe your spiritual grounding is just that you recognize that you are living on earth with other people and you honor that. I mean, it could be as simple as that, but having some kind of thing that's a little bit bigger than yourself that helps you remember that you're part of something bigger.
And for me, I always tell people it's nature. If you're not into religion,
yeah.
you could go outside and sit in the grass and close your eyes and just put your hands and feet like on the ground and say, this earth is way bigger than me and I'm a huge part of this system. And that's it. You're grounded. Yeah. Like that doesn't have to be like a big God thing. Like it doesn't have to. So
and you don't have to buy any stuff. You don't have to pray. You don't have to do it. But having some kind of daily moment where you just are reminded that you're part of something bigger, it takes us out of our little brain where we're focused on our own crap. Yep. And it helps us get a bigger perspective. And man, that gets me through the day some days. And then the bonus fourth one is I just want to remind people to have a freaking sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because seriously, if you don't have a sense of humor about this stuff, if you take everything super seriously, if you can't take a joke about diabetes or fibromyalgia every once in a while, you know, you're gonna be bummed. So yeah. I make a lot of fart jokes. I won't do it here. But I make a lot of fart jokes and they really crack me up.
That's awesome.
Okay, so here's a great example. Because of the meds I take, I'm more prone to bruising. So the other night I was getting ready for bed and my boyfriend pointed out that I had 2 perfectly round, equidistant bruises, like one on each butt cheek.
Oh.
And I was like, where did those come from? I started to freak out. I'm like, where did those come from? Oh my God, what happened? I figured out they came from gardening because I was like sitting on my knees and resting on my shoes.
Yeah.
But so my boyfriend said they're like the spots on a butterfly that are supposed to look like eyeballs that make them look like a bigger creature instead of. Yeah. So I'm like, so I have eyes on my butt. So I have a face butt. This is what's happening now. So he's been calling me face butt, and I think it's hilarious. Yeah. Like, it's a way better thing than like stressing about my bruises. So humor, it's like you got to find things to laugh about, and feel free to hashtag me face butt from now on.
Hashtag face butt fart jokes.
I mean, you gotta laugh. Seriously, it's the best thing.
I totally agree. And I just noticed as I was watching you, I think great minds think alike. I don't know if you can see, but I think we both have sparkly nail polish on.
Yes.
Chronic babes, sparkly nail polish think alike.
Good. Yeah, I love that you have it. Yeah, you got to have glitter in your life. It's essential. I'm that jerk who glitter bombs people. I mail people.
Oh no, that's not cool. That's
no. I do it all the time. I wish more people would do it to me. I love it when I open an envelope full of glitter, but I mean,
I think that you might be in a category all to yourself.
I love it. Everybody calls it craft herpes, and I'm like, that's the only kind of herpes that I want. Is like the glitter that won't go away. I want it. Like I want it all over.
But isn't herpes? Isn't that another chronic disease? Really,
it is.
I mean, so yeah. But yeah, so
I'll add that to my list. I'll add to my list after all the other stuff, glitter herpes. Like
there you go. Hashtag. So, I mean, is there anything else you want to share? Because you've given us so many amazing things to think about and also that are actionable that we can start implementing into our lives right away. Is there anything else that you want to add before we kind of wrap it up?
Well, first of all, I'm just so grateful and I love talking with you. I think we just have a great time, which is fun. The biggest thing I would say is just if anybody wants to kind of check out Chronic Babe, we've got so much to offer, and especially with the book coming out, I think maybe we can have a little book club where they're reading my book and reading your book and some other books.
Do you have a date that it's coming out, or is it like TBD? Or
I pledged to finish it at the end of summer, and I feel confident that that's what will happen. So I don't have an exact date, but I'm looking at end of August. So by the end of August, it should be available on Amazon, and I'll do a big
time for my birthday. I'll get myself a gift for my birthday.
Yay!
Or actually, I'll probably get it because I pledged to your campaign, so I'll probably get it anyway.
Well, I'll send some glitter with yours.
Oh, sweet! I'll open the book. Boom! Glitter.
And then you can send it back to me, and I'll open it, and I'll be happy. No, I honestly, I think I would just encourage people to sign up for a newsletter, because then you get announcements about when the book comes out and about collaborations. Like when this video is published, I'll announce it to my audience. So I mean, the newsletter is always like the place to go to get the latest scoop. So
awesome.
But yeah, I'm just really grateful, and it's really fun to chat with you. And I love that there are so many of us out there doing this kind of work that's like really close to our hearts and helping other people who are like us, because it really. It's changed my life. It's helped me feel that I'm not alone. I'm nowhere near alone in this. I'm surrounded by amazing people that are taking great care of themselves and really thriving in spite of it. So I think we're pretty lucky.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel the same way about you. I've had a great time talking to you. For everybody watching, literally, this is the first time Jenni and I have ever spoken. Like, I feel like I've known you forever. And I think that's one of the great things about speaking to people who have similar situations, that we kind of bypass all the BS of like, oh, like, let's get to know each other before we like be real with each other. It's like, no, we're just like, this is it.
We're there.
Like, here it is. And we don't have to take like an hour to like really get comfortable, because boom, we're comfortable just like that. So thank you. I thank you so much for taking the time to do this, because you've offered some amazing information and laughs and, I'm sure tons of inspiration. So everybody out there, go check out Jenni's site, chronicbabe.com. And of course, scroll down, find her on all of the social media sites that she has. And I'm going to put everything down there, and just support and get involved and, get your voice out there, because we want to hear from you too. And that's how our community gets stronger, by adding more people to it on a regular basis. So for now, I think that's all. We're going to wrap it up, and we're going to see you on the next episode. So thanks again for joining us, Jenni, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.